This is a beautiful moment for me tonight because last week, let me just catch everybody up. Last week we were in this passage in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. And in verse 9 it says that you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, and a people belonging to God. And we unpackaged that with great nuance, but you are a chosen people. One of the things that we said last week was that the chosen people is a very group of people that is unified yet very diversified. There's unity, yet there's diversity. And so tonight, really, this is a proud moment for me because tonight, this is a celebration of the kingdom. Yes, we're gathering here tonight to celebrate a moment in time that we've partnered with Compassion International on one meal, one day, and how we either skipped a meal or brought a lunch, and the money that would have been spent that we gave to go towards children who are hungry and those who are starving literally to death. And so yes, we're celebrating that, but more than that, we're celebrating the kingdom tonight. Tonight, the kingdom comes together. And so we want to welcome Calvary here tonight. Your pastor, I want to say this in front of you guys, and this isn't to, every time we get an opportunity and publicly, this doesn't always have to take place, but you guys are incredibly blessed to have Brian as your leader, to have Brian as your shepherd, to have Brian as your pastor. He's a great buddy of mine he's been here for 6 years now. You've been in town for 6 years. I've been here for 7 years, going on 8. It's pretty rare that you got two guys that stay in the same place, in a position for this duration. So God has allowed Brian and I to create a pretty unique relationship and partnership, and to we deeply love this community, and we deeply believe in the gospel and the power of the gospel and the life transforming power of the gospel. We believe that God wants to do something special here. So let me open up in a word of prayer. We're gonna jump into to kind of a little different passage tonight to deviate, but it'll make a ton of sense. So let's pray and we're gonna jump in. Father, thank you for this moment as we celebrate the kingdom, as we celebrate your gospel, your revolutionary, radical love story tonight, Father. And Father, the reality is that we're sitting here tonight as literally as a living example of what the gospel does in humanity's lives, Father. And so, Father, we ask that you be glorified. We ask that your name be praised, that your name be famed, Father. And thank you for creating the church, for calling the church, for calling us, the gathering of called out ones, to be your living representation. And so, Father, as we gather here tonight as a tapestry of stories, Father, thank you for the identity given to us found in your gospel. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. So I would argue and I would submit with you guys, and I would submit tonight that biblically, as we open up the scriptures, there's no such thing as passive Christianity. That's kind of the thrust for this conversation we're in this month, and we're going to deviate a little bit, but we're going to stay within the conversation for those who've been coming for the last couple weeks and into next week. I believe, biblically, as we open up the scriptures, we see that there's no such thing as passive Christianity. It doesn't exist anywhere, and yet, if we're not careful, the majority of us oftentimes find ourselves in a very passive place. When passivity sets in, we become numb to passion. We become numb to progress. We become numb to movement. And all of a sudden we atrophy and we begin to live these stagnant lives that kind of are stationary. And there's no progress. There's no movement. We isolate ourselves, and life really doesn't begin to make sense at all. And so if we don't agree and understand it, as we open up the scriptures, it is a call to action. It's a call to do something. For those who call themselves followers of Christ, for those who have allowed the gospel, the radical love story of Jesus, the revolutionary love story of Jesus to penetrate our hearts, to sink its roots down deep, and to transform us. For those who call ourselves followers of Christ, we know biblically that we are called to action. We're called to do something. And we can define compassion like this. Compassion is recognizing the need and then doing something about it. We're great as Americans at recognizing need. And I'm talking generally here, so forgive me if you don't find yourself kind of in this boat, if you will. But we're great at recognizing needs. We're great at diagnosing needs. And I would submit that we're pretty poor at doing something about it. We need a generation, and I don't even want to say students, because oftentimes with students comes this parent of immaturity and youth and no wisdom involved in it. But instead tonight, I don't even want to say students. I want to call us the church. And so the church, we must do something. We must be a part of something that's larger and bigger than who we are. That's what it means to be the church. Literally, at the ecclesia, the gathering of the called out ones. And so tonight we gather as a celebration of the kingdom, the celebration of what God is doing. He's inviting us into something larger and much deeper and much bigger than any one of us or any one of our stories. And so tonight we're unified, but yet we're diversified. God is calling us to something bigger. So the questions that I ponder oftentimes is, what is God going to do through this generation? What is God going to use this generation to accomplish? And by the way, Brian and I still demographically are on the front side of your generation. So when I say this generation, I'm putting us into that. What is this generation going to do? Because it's no longer acceptable. It never has been acceptable to just sit back idle and watch the world spin and watch the world turn and to do nothing. Compassion is recognizing the need and then doing something about it. So tonight we're going to look at a passage of Scripture that warns us what happens when we recognize need and we do nothing. That warns us what life looks like when we become numb to progress, when we become numb to movement, numb to passion. And so I want to release you tonight as we begin this. Listen, because this is big. My wife is sitting back there and she can attest to this. Man, I've struggled with this my entire life. And I'm getting to a point, to a place right now as I get a little bit older. I'm about to turn 30. Don't judge me. It's going to be a pretty tough time, 5-6 months for me. But I'm getting to a point as I get a little bit older that I'm realizing this in my own life. And so I want to invite you to this and give you permission. I want to give you permission tonight to release yourself from the burden of wanting or feeling like you need to do something big for God. Listen to me, because that sounds awkward or odd on the surface. Listen, I want to give you the permission to release yourself from the burden to do something big, or the desire or the want to do something big for God. Instead, as we open up the Scriptures, here's what we see over and over and over again. We see God calling the church, again, the gathering of the called out ones, calling the church to be extraordinary in our ordinary. To be extraordinary in our ordinary. The ordinary rhythms of life. Tomorrow is Friday. You are going to wake up and you're going to school. It's an ordinary rhythm. You know, you don't have school tomorrow? Okay, cool, check. Tomorrow you're going to sleep in really late because you're lazy bums. We have an ordinary rhythm to life. And in the ordinary rhythm to life, we're called to be extraordinary in the ordinary rhythms of life. We're called to love our neighbor in such a way that is just ordinary. Because God has called us out. Again, a chosen people, a royal priesthood. We're unified, yet we're diversified, a royal priesthood. There's no passivity involved in following Christ. It only leads to action. The priests in the Bible were always active. They were always doing something. The church is now the living priesthood that was once reserved for the nation of Israel in the Old Testament, specifically the line of Aaron. But through Christ, we are now priests. A holy nation, set apart, consecrated to be a part of something that's deeper and bigger than who we are. To be a part of something that's more. And again, the thing that we crave and that we yearn for, to be a part of that. A people belonging to God. Those who are connected deeply and intimately, who know Jesus. John chapter 17, verse 3. My prayer, Jesus, he's on his way to the cross and he's praying and he says, my prayer is that they may know me. That word know literally, so the Greek word gnosko means to know through experience, to know with proximity, not just to know about. My prayer is that they may deeply and intimately and passionately know the ins and outs of who I am. And the only way that takes place is through pursuing, through activity, through action, through doing something. And so we're going to jump over your Bibles to 1 Timothy. To 1 Timothy. Might be a familiar passage for some of you. But I thought it was fitting, Brian and I, as we met over the last couple of weeks, we thought it was fitting concerning, especially in this time of one meal, one day, and taking this moment out to highlight this, and yet remind ourselves that we're called to do something. And so Paul writes, starting in verse 17, he says, command those, Paul, he's writing to Timothy. Timothy's in Ephesus. Paul had spent many years in Ephesus. He's left Timothy there. This was after Paul's third missionary journey. He's left Timothy there to oversee this church that's been planted in Ephesus. Timothy's kind of like Paul's protege, his associate, his disciple, his follower. And so Timothy was very instrumental in Paul's journeys. Paul brought along Barnabas in his first journey and Silas in the second journey. And then he brings Timothy along with him, and he builds him up and he disciples him so that he may build up and disciple other people. So he's writing to Timothy as Timothy is protecting and overseeing this congregation, this body of believers in Ephesus. And Ephesus was this major kind of intersection of cities, and it was in Ephesus that a bunch of so to speak, crap went down, and there was illicit homosexuality and drug use. There's illicit moments of people who were turning away from Jesus. And they were moving more towards what they thought made sense. And so Timothy is here, and Paul's admonishing him and what it means to build up other believers and other followers and other leaders. And he gives this command. He gives these instructions, if you will, starting in verse 17. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. Now, let me give a little bit more context here to kind of bring out and highlight what's going on. So Nero, he's the Roman emperor. He's Caesar at the time. He's lord of over all the known empire at the time. So Caesar, this is kind of between 62, 64, 65 AD. And Nero, if you remember, all the way back in 64 is when the great fires, you might have learned this in history class, the great fires were set to Rome. And so there's this part of Rome, kind of the ghetto, the slums, that was burning down. This is where all the poor people lived. Okay? And so Nero's quote-unquote out of town, and this fire has been set to the slums, to this poor part, and upon his return, he sees that it's been burned down. Where it used to be slums, Nero builds like this golden palace to himself as a representation to himself. And the Romans are kind of upset, like, the poor used to live here, and you're building this for yourself. And so Nero needs a scapegoat. What's the scapegoat? He blames it on the Christians. He blames it on the early first century Christians, and it's through Nero that the first big, widespread persecution breaks out. It's through Nero that the persecution of Christians became sport, where they marched them down to Circus Maximus and into the Colosseum. I've been to both places, and just imagine walking down the Roman Forum and walking into the Colosseum and seeing Christians persecuted for sport. He gathered them and he bundled them together and he burned them at the stake. In fact, he even burned Christians as a source of light at his festivals, as a human torch, if you will. It was sport, it was game. He needed someone, and so he needed someone to shift the blame and to take the pressure off himself. Obviously, Nero was psychotic, but here's the deal. In this moment, these early Christians are seeing wealth. They're seeing this empire, they're seeing the accumulation, this empire getting bigger and bigger, getting more glorious and more glorious.